Most people believe a gemstone's value comes from a single perfect color. But some of the world's most fascinating gemstones became famous because nature couldn't decide on just one. Hidden inside these crystals are two colors, two geological stories, and in some cases, two completely different identities. Today, you'll discover 15 rare bicolor gemstones that have quietly captured the attention of serious collectors. Some look too perfect to be natural. Others are so unusual that many gemstone enthusiasts will never see one in person. More importantly, you'll discover why collectors often value uniqueness over perfection, and why a single color boundary inside a crystal can make a gemstone unforgettable. Stay until the end, because the number one gemstone reveals the secret that separates an ordinary collectible from something truly irreplaceable. Let's begin with number 15. Number 15, Bicolor Fluorite. At first glance, Bicolor Fluorite may seem like an unusual place to begin a list of gemstones, quietly attracting the attention of collectors. After all, fluorite is not among the most expensive gems in the world, nor is it the first name that comes to mind when discussing elite collections. Yet that is precisely why it belongs here. One of the most powerful forces in gemstone collecting is not rarity alone. It is contrast. Human perception is naturally drawn to opposites: light and shadow, order and chaos, simplicity and complexity. When two distinctly different colors appear side by side within a single crystal, the eye instinctively pauses. The mind immediately begins asking questions. How did this happen? Where does one color end and the other begin? And perhaps most importantly, how could nature create something that appears almost intentional? Bicolor fluorite provides one of the clearest answers to those questions. Some specimens display vivid purple zones flowing directly into green, blue-green, or even golden sections. In exceptional crystals, the boundary between those colors can appear so sharp that it resembles brushstrokes applied by an artist rather than a process that occurred deep underground over millions of years. To geologists, these color divisions record changing chemical conditions during crystal growth. To collectors, however, they represent something much more personal. They represent individuality. No two bicolor fluorite crystals develop in exactly the same way. The proportions differ. The color transitions differ. Even the internal patterns that separate one zone from another are unique. That uniqueness helps explain why many experienced collectors are often drawn toward unusual specimens rather than textbook-perfect examples. A flawless gemstone can be admired. A gemstone that cannot be duplicated becomes remembered. This distinction forms the foundation of the entire bicolor gemstone market. The stones featured throughout this countdown are not being sought after simply because they are beautiful. They are being sought after because they reveal moments when nature briefly abandoned predictability and produced something entirely unexpected. Bicolor fluorite may be the first example on this list, but it introduces a theme that will appear again and again as the countdown continues. Because the next gemstone demonstrates an even more intriguing question: what happens when a naturally divided crystal becomes so convincing that many people assume human hands must have created it? Number 14, Bicolor Topaz. One of the most fascinating truths in the gemstone world is that beauty alone is rarely enough to impress experienced collectors. Beauty can be created. Beauty can be enhanced. Beauty can even be manufactured. Authenticity, however, is much harder to reproduce. That distinction helps explain why certain examples of bicolor topaz continue to attract quiet attention among serious gemstone enthusiasts. To the average observer, a crystal displaying two different colors may simply appear attractive. Yet collectors often see something entirely different. They see evidence that the colors form naturally during the crystal's growth rather than being introduced later through treatment or enhancement. And in the world of gemstones, that difference matters enormously. Topaz has long occupied a complicated position in the jewelry industry. For decades, consumers have encountered topaz in a wide range of vibrant colors. The challenge is that many of those colors are the result of human intervention rather than natural geological processes. Because of this history, naturally occurring bicolor topaz carries a unique appeal. It offers something collectors constantly search for: proof that nature arrived first. In exceptional specimens, golden, champagne, pale blue, or honey-colored zones can appear within the same crystal. These color boundaries are not random decorations. They are geological records, documenting shifts in chemistry and environmental conditions as the crystals slowly formed underground. Every transition tells part of that story. More importantly, every transition is difficult to replicate. This touches on a deeper psychological reality that drives much of high-end collecting. People often assume wealthy collectors pursue perfection. In reality, many pursue credibility. They want objects that demonstrate authenticity in ways that cannot easily be copied. A natural bicolor topaz does exactly that. Its value is not based solely on appearance. Its value comes from the fact that the crystal preserves evidence of a process that occurred long before human beings ever discovered it. That is why unusual natural specimens often generate far more excitement among collectors than stones that simply appear flawless. The rarest treasures are not always the brightest. Sometimes they are the most convincing. And that idea becomes even more extraordinary with the next gemstone on this list. Because unlike bicolor topaz, the crystal ahead appears so unlikely that many first-time viewers assume it must be artificial, until they discover the remarkable geological story hidden inside it. Number 13. Ametrine. Some gemstones become desirable because they are rare. Others become desirable because they are beautiful. Ametrine occupies a far more unusual category. It becomes desirable because it appears to break the rules. At first glance, many people assume they are looking at two different gemstones fused together. One portion displays the rich violet tones associated with amethyst. The other reveals the warm golden hues typically found in citrine. Yet both colors exist inside a single crystal. No seams, no joins, no boundaries created by human hands. Just one crystal containing what appears to be two completely different identities. That visual contradiction is precisely what has made Ametrine one of the most fascinating bicolor gemstones in the world. The appeal goes beyond aesthetics. It taps directly into a deeper human instinct, curiosity toward things that seem impossible. Throughout history, people have been drawn to natural phenomena that challenge expectations. Double rainbows, bioluminescent oceans, perfectly symmetrical snowflakes. These are the moments that force the mind to pause and reconsider what nature is capable of creating. Ametrine belongs in that category. Its distinctive color division is the result of changing temperatures during crystal growth deep underground. Different sections of the crystal experience different geological conditions, allowing one area to develop the purple coloration associated with amethyst, while another developed the golden coloration of citrine. The result is not simply a gemstone, it is a visible record of environmental change preserved inside a crystal. For collectors, that story often matters more than the colors themselves. A perfectly colored gemstone can be admired from across a room. A gemstone that preserves evidence of Earth's history invites closer examination. That difference helps explain why unusual Ametrine specimens continue to attract attention despite existing alongside far more famous gemstones. Collectors are not merely purchasing a beautiful object. They are acquiring proof that nature occasionally produces outcomes that seem too deliberate to be accidental. And as remarkable as Ametrine appears, it introduces an even bigger idea. If changing geological conditions can transform a single crystal into two distinct colors, what happens when that same process occurs inside one of the most common minerals on Earth? The next gemstone provides a surprising answer and reveals why even familiar minerals can hide extraordinary secrets. Number 12. Bicolor Quartz. One of the biggest surprises in the gemstone world is that rarity does not always come from an exotic mineral. Sometimes it comes from an ordinary mineral doing something extraordinary. Few crystals illustrate that idea better than bicolor quartz. At first, the concept seems almost contradictory. Quartz is one of the most abundant minerals on Earth. It can be found on every continent and appears in countless forms, from common rock formations to highly prized gemstones. Because of its familiarity, many people assume there is little left to discover about it. Collectors know better. The most experienced gemstone enthusiasts often understand that the familiar can sometimes hide the greatest surprises. Bicolor quartz is a perfect example. Within a single crystal, distinct color zones may appear side by side, creating combinations that seem unlikely for such a common mineral. Purple can transition into smoky gray. Golden hues may blend into nearly colorless sections. In rare cases, the contrast becomes so striking that the crystal appears to contain two separate identities trapped within the same structure. What makes this phenomenon particularly fascinating is not simply the appearance. It is what the appearance reveals. Every color boundary inside a bicolor quartz crystal represents a moment when geological conditions changed. Trace elements shifted, temperatures fluctuated, chemical environments evolved. As the crystal continued to grow, those changes became permanently recorded within its structure. In other words, the crystal became a timeline. That concept resonates strongly with serious collectors because it transforms the gemstone from a decorative object into a historical document. This highlights an important truth about high-end collecting. The rarest treasures are not always the minerals that few people have heard of. Sometimes they are minerals everyone knows, but almost no one has seen in their most unusual form. Bicolor quartz challenges the assumption that familiarity reduces value. Instead, it demonstrates that rarity can emerge when common ingredients combine in an uncommon way. That lesson extends far beyond gemstones. Again and again, collectors are drawn toward objects that reveal hidden complexity beneath an ordinary surface. And that pattern becomes even more compelling with the next gemstone. Because unlike quartz, the crystal ahead belongs to one of the most recognizable names in the entire gemstone world. Yet very few people realize that this famous gemstone can display a second side that completely changes the way it is understood. That gemstone is bicolor sapphire. Number 11. Bicolor sapphire. Some gemstones become so famous that people stop looking closely at them. Sapphire is one of those gemstones. For centuries, it has been associated with royalty, prestige, and the iconic deep blue color that appears in everything from museum collections to engagement rings. Mention sapphire, and most people immediately picture a rich blue stone with a uniform appearance. That expectation is exactly what makes bicolor sapphire so fascinating. Because hidden behind sapphire's familiar reputation is a far rarer and far less discussed reality. Not every sapphire chooses a single color. In exceptional crystals, distinct color zones can form during growth, creating combinations of blue and yellow, blue and green, or even blue and colorless sections within the same stone. Instead of displaying the consistency that sapphire is famous for, these rare examples reveal evidence of change. And that evidence is what attracts serious collectors. One of the most overlooked truths in gemstone collecting is that familiarity often hides rarity. When people encounter a famous gemstone, they tend to focus on its textbook appearance. Collectors, however, frequently look beyond the standard example. They search for the unusual version that challenges expectations. Bicolor sapphire does exactly that. Its color divisions are not flaws. They are geological fingerprints. As the crystal grew deep within the earth, subtle changes in chemistry altered the way trace elements were incorporated into the crystal structure. Over time, those changes became visible as separate color zones, preserving a record of conditions that shifted millions of years ago. This transforms the gemstone into something more than a beautiful object. It becomes evidence that even one of the world's most recognizable gemstones still contains mysteries that many people never discover. That idea resonates strongly among experienced collectors because it reflects a broader principle found throughout the collecting world. The greatest discoveries are often not hidden in obscure places. Sometimes they are hidden inside objects everyone believes they already understand. Bicolor sapphire is a reminder that rarity does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides behind a familiar name. And as intriguing as that may be, the next gemstone introduces a different kind of fascination altogether. Because while bicolor sapphire reveals an unexpected side of a famous gemstone, the crystal ahead demonstrates why collectors are often drawn to exceptions rather than perfection, and why an unusual variation can become more memorable than the standard version everyone expects to see. Number 10. Bicolor Garnet. One of the most common misconceptions about gemstone collecting is the belief that rarity always comes from obscurity. In reality, some of the most intriguing collector pieces emerge from gemstones that people think they already understand. Garnet is a perfect example. For most people, garnet is simple. It is the deep red gemstone that has appeared in jewelry for centuries. It is familiar, widely recognized, and often overshadowed by more famous stones such as sapphire, emerald, or ruby. That reputation creates an interesting problem. When a gemstone becomes predictable, people stop expecting surprises. Collectors do the opposite. They actively search for them. This is where bicolor garnet enters the story. Unlike traditional garnets that display a single dominant color, rare bicolor specimens reveal distinct zones where one color gradually transitions into another. Deep red may shift into vibrant orange. Rich burgundy may blend into warm amber tones. In exceptional crystals, the contrast can be dramatic enough to make the stone appear as though it contains two separate personalities. And for collectors, that is precisely the appeal. The attraction is not merely visual, it is psychological. Humans are naturally drawn to exceptions because exceptions challenge assumptions. A perfectly red garnet confirms what people already know. A bicolor garnet forces them to reconsider it. Suddenly, a gemstone that seemed familiar becomes unpredictable again. That transformation lies at the heart of many elite collections. Experienced collectors often reach a point where size, clarity, and even market value become less interesting than uniqueness. What begins to matter most is finding something that breaks the pattern, something that stands apart from thousands of similar specimens. Bicolor garnet represents that philosophy perfectly. Its color zoning records subtle shifts in the crystal's environment during growth. Tiny changes in chemistry created a result that could never be reproduced in exactly the same way again. The finished crystal becomes more than a gemstone. It becomes a geological accident that happened only once. That idea carries enormous weight in the collecting world, because true rarity is not always about how many examples exist. Sometimes it is about how many stories exist. And while bicolor garnet demonstrates the power of an exception, the next gemstone reveals something even more intriguing. Because some collectors eventually move beyond rare variations of familiar stones and begin searching for gemstones so little known that even passionate enthusiasts may never encounter one in person. That search leads directly to Bicolor Scapolite. Number 9. Bicolor Scapolite. There is a moment that many serious gemstone collectors eventually experience. After years of learning about diamonds, sapphires, emeralds, rubies, and other famous stones, a realization begins to emerge. The most interesting discoveries are often not the ones everyone is talking about. They are the ones hardly anyone is talking about at all. That realization helps explain the quiet fascination surrounding Bicolor Scapolite. Outside specialist circles, the name receives surprisingly little attention. Many jewelry buyers have never encountered it. Even some gemstone enthusiasts may go years without seeing a significant specimen in person. Yet among collectors who enjoy exploring beyond the mainstream, that obscurity is part of the attraction. In fact, it may be the attraction. Bicolor Scapolite often displays striking divisions between colors such as golden yellow and violet, creating a visual contrast that immediately captures attention. The color zoning can appear remarkably clean, almost as if separate gemstones were somehow fused together during formation. But the true appeal extends beyond appearance. It lies in discovery. One of the strongest psychological motivations in collecting is the desire to uncover something before everyone else does. Not because it will necessarily become famous, but because finding something overlooked creates a deeper connection than simply acquiring something popular. Bicolor Scapolite embodies that feeling. It represents a corner of the gemstone world that remains largely hidden from public attention. While most collectors compete for the same well-known names, stones like Scapolite offer a different kind of reward, the satisfaction of exploring territory that feels less crowded and more personal. This pattern appears throughout many elite collections. The goal is not always to own the most expensive specimen. Sometimes the goal is to own the most interesting conversation. A rare bicolor Scapolite can accomplish exactly that. Its unusual color zoning, limited recognition, and relative scarcity combine to create a gemstone that feels more like a discovery than a purchase. And that distinction matters, Because many experienced collectors eventually learn that the thrill of collecting is not driven by ownership alone. It is driven by curiosity. Yet even scapolite occupies a peculiar middle ground. It remains hidden, but it is not entirely unknown. The next gemstone tells a very different story, because it belongs to a mineral that spent centuries living in the shadow of something more famous, only to eventually earn recognition on its own terms. That gemstone is Bicolor Spinel. Number 8. Bicolor Spinel. Some gemstones become famous because they are immediately recognized. Others spend centuries hiding in plain sight. Spinel belongs firmly in the second category. For much of history, some of the world's most celebrated red gemstones were not actually rubies at all. They were spinels. Kings, emperors, and collectors admired them, fought over them, and displayed them in royal treasuries without realizing they belonged to an entirely different mineral species. That misunderstanding lasted for centuries, and in many ways it created one of the most fascinating stories in the gemstone world. Today, Spinel is finally receiving the recognition it deserves. Yet among collectors, the most intriguing examples are often not the traditional single-color stones. Increasingly, attention turns toward unusual specimens that reveal something unexpected. That brings the focus to Bicolor Spinel. Rare crystals displaying distinct zones of pink and violet, red and purple, or other subtle color combinations possess an appeal that goes beyond beauty alone. They tell a story about transformation, both geological and historical. The geological story is written inside the crystal itself. Variations in trace elements during growth create separate color regions, preserving moments when conditions change deep beneath the Earth's surface. The historical story is equally compelling. For generations, Spinel lived in the shadow of more famous gemstones. Many people admired it without knowing its true identity. Only later did it emerge as a prized collector stone in its own right. This dual narrative resonates strongly with experienced collectors because it reflects a recurring pattern found throughout the collecting world. True value is not always recognized immediately. Sometimes it takes decades, sometimes centuries. The individuals who identify that value early are often the ones who build the most memorable collections. Bicolor Spinel embodies that principle perfectly. Its appeal is not based on popularity. In fact, its relative lack of mainstream attention makes it even more interesting to many enthusiasts. It represents a gemstone that rewards curiosity rather than convention, and that may be one of the defining characteristics of elite collecting. The desire to discover something before everyone else notices, because once the crowd arrives, the sense of discovery begins to disappear. Yet even Spinel cannot match the next gemstone in one crucial category: scarcity. Because the crystal ahead comes from a location so limited that its entire global supply can be traced back to a remarkably small corner of the Earth. That gemstone is Bicolor Tanzanite. Number 7. Bicolor Tanzanite. There is a significant difference between something that is rare and something that is limited. A gemstone can be rare because high-quality specimens are difficult to find, but a gemstone becomes truly extraordinary when its entire existence depends on a single location. That is the story of Tanzanite. Unlike many gemstones that have been discovered across multiple countries and continents, Tanzanite originates from an exceptionally small area near the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. Its known source is so geographically restricted that it has become one of the most famous examples of location-based rarity in the gemstone world. For collectors, that fact alone is fascinating. But Bicolor Tanzanite introduces another layer of complexity. In rare specimens, distinct zones of blue and violet can coexist within the same crystal. Instead of presenting a uniform appearance, the stone reveals a visual record of changing conditions during growth. Different environments influence different parts of the crystal, creating color boundaries that transformed a beautiful gemstone into something far more individual. And individuality is exactly what serious collectors seek. Many people assume wealthy collectors pursue the largest gemstone or the most expensive gemstone. While those factors can matter, the strongest collections are often built around something else entirely: uniqueness. A bicolor Tanzanite crystal offers that uniqueness naturally. No designer planned its color distribution. No artisan painted its boundaries. The crystal itself became a geological document, recording subtle shifts that occurred millions of years before human beings ever discovered it. This is where scarcity becomes more powerful than beauty. Beauty can be found in countless places. Scarcity cannot. Every bicolor tanzanite carries an unspoken reminder that its birthplace is limited to one remarkably small region of the earth. Every specimen therefore feels connected to a source that cannot simply be expanded when demand increases. That reality creates a powerful psychological effect. Collectors are often motivated not by what exists today, but by what may become increasingly difficult to obtain tomorrow. Bicolor tanzanite captures that feeling perfectly. It represents a combination of geographic rarity, natural individuality, and geological history that few gemstones can match. Yet even tanzanite falls short of the next gemstone in one important respect. Because while tanzanite is prized for where it comes from, the crystal ahead is prized for something even more personal. No two examples are ever truly alike, and that idea lies at the very heart of elite gemstone collecting. That gemstone is Bicolor Tourmaline. Number 6. Bicolor Tourmaline. There is a question that quietly influences nearly every serious collector. Not how beautiful a gemstone is, not how expensive it is, but how replaceable it is. If a specimen disappears tomorrow, could another one be found that looks exactly the same? For many gemstones, the answer is often yes. For Bicolor Tourmaline, the answer is almost always no. This is one of the reasons tourmaline occupies such a unique position within the collector world. Few gemstone families display the same range of colors, and even fewer produce color zoning with such dramatic variation. Within a single crystal, green may transition into yellow. Blue may fade into sea green. Pink may merge into golden tones. Every crystal becomes its own geological experiment, and that individuality is precisely what attracts collectors. Unlike gemstones that are primarily judged by standardized grading systems, Bicolor Tourmaline often resists comparison. Two specimens may share similar colors, yet their internal patterns, transitions, proportions, and crystal structures can be completely different. As a result, collectors rarely speak about finding the best specimen. Instead, they speak about finding their specimen. That distinction is important. The highest levels of collecting are rarely driven by ownership alone. They are driven by identity. People are naturally drawn to objects that feel personal, irreplaceable, and impossible to duplicate. Bicolor Tourmaline embodies all three. Every color boundary inside the crystal records a moment when conditions changed during growth. Trace elements shifted, temperatures fluctuated, chemical environments evolved. The crystal responded by creating a new color zone, permanently preserving that moment in time. Millions of years later, those changes remain visible. What collectors ultimately acquire is not just a gemstone, but a sequence of geological decisions made by nature itself. No designer planned them, no craftsman repeated them, and no future crystal will recreate them in exactly the same way. This is why many experienced collectors become increasingly fascinated by tourmaline as their knowledge grows. The deeper they explore, the more they realize that uniqueness itself can become a form of rarity. Yet even bicolor tourmaline exists within a relatively well-known gemstone family. The next gemstone takes rarity in a different direction, because some collectors eventually become fascinated not by stones that are unique, but by stones that are almost unknown. And few gemstones illustrate that idea better than Bicolor Kornerupine. Number 5. Bicolor Kornerupine. In most areas of life, recognition creates value. Famous brands attract attention. Famous artists command higher prices. Famous collectibles become household names. Yet the gemstone world often follows a very different set of rules. Among experienced collectors, there is a quiet appreciation for discoveries that remain hidden from public awareness. In some cases, the less known a gemstone is, the more intriguing it becomes. Few stones illustrate that idea better than Bicolor Kornerupine. For many people, the name itself is unfamiliar. It rarely appears in mainstream jewelry advertisements. It is seldom discussed outside specialist circles. Even among gemstone enthusiasts, it remains a mineral that many have heard about but never actually seen. And that rarity of exposure creates a unique form of appeal. Bicolor Kornerupine can display remarkable combinations of olive green, golden yellow, brownish-green, and honey-colored zones within a single crystal. The transitions are often subtle yet unmistakable, creating a visual complexity that rewards careful observation rather than immediate attention. This is precisely why collectors find it fascinating. Unlike gemstones, whose value depends on instant recognition, Kornerupine often requires knowledge to appreciate. Its appeal grows as understanding grows. That relationship reflects a deeper pattern found throughout elite collecting. Many collectors eventually reach a point where public approval becomes less important than personal discovery. The excitement no longer comes from owning something everyone recognizes. It comes from uncovering something few people know exists. Bicolor Kornerupine embodies that mindset. Its scarcity is not only geological, it is cultural. Most people will never encounter one. Many collectors will spend years without adding one to their collections. And even when specimens appear, no two display exactly the same arrangement of colors or internal character. As a result, each crystal feels less like a commodity and more like a private discovery. That distinction matters, because at the highest levels of collecting, rarity is no longer measured solely by numbers. It is measured by familiarity. The fewer people who understand what they are looking at, the more rewarding the discovery can become. Yet even Kornerupine, for all its obscurity, remains overshadowed by the gemstone that comes next, because the next crystal combines rarity with something even more powerful. A color so extraordinary that it changed the gemstone world almost overnight. That gemstone is Bicolor Paraíba Tourmaline. Number 4. Bicolor Paraíba Tourmaline. Every generation of gemstone collectors seems to witness at least one discovery that changes the rules. A gemstone appears seemingly out of nowhere, and within a remarkably short period of time, it transforms the entire conversation surrounding rarity, beauty, and desirability. For modern collectors, Paraíba Tourmaline is one of those discoveries. When the first specimens emerged from the Brazilian state of Paraíba in the late 20th century, even experienced gemologists struggled to describe what they were seeing. The colors appeared almost unreal. Electric blues, glowing greens, and neon turquoise hues seemed to radiate from within the crystal itself. The effect was so unusual that many people assumed enhancement or artificial treatment must be involved. Yet the colors were natural. That fact alone elevated Paraíba into one of the most extraordinary gemstone discoveries of the modern era. Bicolor Paraíba Tourmaline takes that story even further. Instead of displaying a single neon hue, rare specimens reveal transitions between electric blue and vivid green, creating a visual effect that feels almost impossible. The crystal appears to contain two separate sources of light trapped within the same structure. And that perception is exactly what fascinates collectors. Human beings are naturally drawn toward things that challenge expectations. When something appears too vivid, too unusual, or too perfect to be natural, curiosity takes over. The mind searches for an explanation. Paraíba offers one. Its remarkable colors are linked to traces of copper incorporated during crystal formation. Under the right conditions, those trace elements produce hues unlike almost anything else found in the gemstone world. For collectors, this transforms the stone into more than a rare mineral. It becomes evidence that nature is capable of producing outcomes more dramatic than many human creations. That realization carries enormous power, because elite collecting is often driven by wonder as much as rarity. Collectors are not merely searching for what is scarce. They are searching for what is unforgettable. Bicolor Paraíba. Tourmaline achieves both. Its color combinations feel futuristic, its origins are legendary, and its appearance remains instantly recognizable even among the world's most valuable gemstones. Yet astonishing color alone is not enough to reach the very top of this list, because the next gemstone introduces something even more extraordinary, a crystal capable of challenging the way people think about color itself. And for many collectors, that ability places it in an entirely different category of rarity. That gemstone is Bicolor Alexandrite. Number 3. Bicolor Alexandrite. Some gemstones are admired for their beauty. Some are admired for their rarity. Alexandrite occupies a far more unusual position. It is admired because it repeatedly challenges belief. Even among experienced collectors, Alexandrite has long been associated with one of the most extraordinary optical phenomena in the gemstone world, the ability to change color under different lighting conditions. A stone that appears green in daylight may shift toward red or purplish red under incandescent light, creating the impression that two different gemstones occupy the same crystal. That alone would be remarkable. But Bicolor Alexandrite introduces an entirely different level of rarity. In exceptional specimens, distinct color zones already exist within the crystal before any lighting change occurs. Different regions of the stone display separate hues, creating a natural division that records variations during growth. Then, when the lighting changes, those colors can transform again. The result is a gemstone that seems determined to refuse a single identity. And that is exactly why collectors become fascinated by it. Human beings naturally seek certainty. The mind prefers stable categories and predictable outcomes. Alexandrite disrupts that instinct. Every time the stone appears to settle into one appearance, it reveals another. This creates a powerful psychological effect. The gemstone remains surprising even after repeated observation. Few collector items can achieve that. Most rare objects eventually become familiar. Their mystery fades as understanding grows. Alexandrite behaves differently. The more people learn about it, the more unusual it becomes. That dynamic places it in a category occupied by only a handful of gemstones. Collectors are not simply purchasing a rare crystal. They are acquiring a phenomenon, a demonstration that the physical world can still produce effects that feel almost magical despite being entirely natural. For many enthusiasts, that distinction is important. True wonder emerges when science provides an explanation, yet the result remains astonishing. Bicolor Alexandrite embodies that balance perfectly. It is understandable, it is measurable, and yet it still feels impossible. That combination helps explain why some collectors spend years searching for exceptional examples. Yet even Alexandrite does not occupy the second position on this list by accident, because the next gemstone achieves something that very few minerals have ever accomplished. It became the defining symbol of the entire bicolor gemstone category, a crystal so recognizable that a single glance is often enough to understand why collectors continue to pursue it. That gemstone is watermelon tourmaline. Number 2. Watermelon tourmaline. Among all bicolor gemstones ever discovered, few have achieved what watermelon tourmaline has. Recognition. Even people with little knowledge of gemstones often understand its appeal almost immediately. One glance is usually enough. A vibrant pink center surrounded by a green outer layer creates an appearance so striking that it resembles a slice of watermelon frozen inside crystal. The resemblance is so perfect that many first-time observers assume it cannot be natural. Yet it is. And that fact explains much of its enduring fascination. Throughout history, human beings have been captivated by patterns. The brain is constantly searching for order, symmetry, and familiar shapes. When nature unexpectedly creates something that resembles a recognizable object, attention becomes almost automatic. Watermelon tourmaline triggers exactly that response, but beneath its visual charm lies a much deeper story. The crystal develops its distinctive appearance as conditions change during growth. Different trace elements become incorporated at different stages, producing separate color zones that remain permanently preserved. What appears to be a simple pattern is actually a geological timeline recorded inside the crystal itself. That combination of beauty and process is what elevates watermelon tourmaline beyond novelty. Collectors do not pursue it merely because it resembles a fruit. They pursue it because it demonstrates one of nature's most extraordinary abilities, the creation of complexity through gradual change. Every specimen tells a slightly different story. Some display thick green rims and small pink cores. Others reveal dramatic color boundaries or unexpected secondary hues. No two crystals develop in exactly the same way, and that uniqueness has helped transform watermelon tourmaline into the defining symbol of the bicolor gemstone category. For many collectors, it represents the moment when geology becomes art. Not art created by human intention, art created by time, Millions of years of chemical shifts, pressure changes, and crystal growth produced a result that appears almost designed, despite being entirely natural. That idea resonates powerfully with serious collectors, because the greatest treasures are often the ones that make people pause and ask a simple question: how did nature do that? Yet despite its fame, watermelon tourmaline is not the final entry on this list, because the #1 position belongs to something even more elusive. Not a gemstone famous for a specific pattern, but a specimen prized for a much rarer quality. The realization that no other example on Earth may ever be exactly the same. That is the world of the collector-grade watermelon tourmaline crystal. #1. Bicolor Imperial Topaz. Throughout this countdown, a recurring theme has appeared again and again. Rare gemstones attract attention. Unusual gemstones create curiosity. But the gemstones that earn a permanent place in elite collections often possess something far more powerful. They feel impossible to replace. That idea brings the journey to its final destination: Bicolor Imperial Topaz. Unlike many gemstones that rely on intense color saturation or dramatic visual effects, Imperial Topaz has always occupied a more refined position within the collector world. Its appeal is quieter, more subtle, more dependent on appreciation than immediate impact. And perhaps that is exactly why serious collectors value it so highly. In exceptional bicolor specimens, warm golden tones transition into rich peach, champagne, pink, or reddish-orange hues. The boundaries are often delicate rather than dramatic, creating a sense of balance that feels almost intentional. Instead of competing colors fighting for attention, the crystal presents a natural harmony between two identities. That harmony is extraordinarily difficult to find. Every stage of the crystal's growth had to unfold under remarkably specific conditions. Tiny shifts in chemistry and temperature influence the final appearance, producing color relationships that could never be repeated with complete accuracy. This is where Bicolor Imperial Topaz separates itself from many other rare gemstones. Its value is not built solely upon rarity. Its value is built upon individuality. Two specimens may share the same mineral species, they may originate from the same region, they may even display similar colors. Yet no two crystals tell exactly the same geological story. For high-end collectors, that distinction matters enormously. The most memorable collections are rarely assembled around objects that can simply be purchased again. Instead, they are built around pieces that feel singular. Pieces that create the uncomfortable but fascinating realization that if this particular specimen disappears, another exactly like it may never appear again. Bicolor Imperial Topaz embodies that philosophy. It represents the point where geology becomes identity, where rarity becomes personal, and where collecting moves beyond ownership into preservation. Perhaps that is the lesson hidden inside every gemstone featured on this list. The wealthiest collectors are not necessarily searching for the brightest crystal, the largest crystal, or even the most famous crystal. They are searching for something much harder to find. A moment in Earth's history that happened only once. And in the world of rare bicolor gemstones, few specimens express that idea more elegantly than an exceptional bicolor imperial topaz. As we've seen today, the most remarkable gemstones aren't always the most famous. Sometimes they're the ones that reveal just how creative nature can be. From rare color boundaries to extraordinary geological stories, each of these bicolor gemstones offers something truly unique. Now we'd love to hear from you. Which gemstone on this list surprised you the most? Leave your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating gemstone discoveries. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next adventure.